Okay, and now Module 5, we're going to explore social learning theory and evolutionary theory. So we've already been focused a lot on a couple of theories that focus on the cognition. There's not a lot of theories as far as our emotional gut reaction that we talked about that helps drive our kind of moral decision making. But cognition was obviously a high level of interest. But this one now we're going to focus on a theory that says, what do we actually do? And in that one is called social learning theory. And we've talked about this one at other points in the semester. So social learning theory is exclusively focused on moral behavior. So what do we actually do when faced with temptation? We don't really care all about the mental machinations that we go through to try to figure that out. What do you actually do? And that observational learning and differential reinforcement and punishment principles are really what influence moral behavior. So that what we see is that moral thinking, moral behavior, more specifically, is situation specific, meaning you may do the right thing in a certain situation, and you may do totally different thing in a different situation. There isn't this overarching reliability between those. It's very situation specific. So moral thinking is linked to moral action, but it's a self-regulatory mechanism that's in place. So we've got to monitor and evaluate our own actions, and do those live up to what we actually do? And that's never a good sign. Anytime you say people say they're going to regulate themselves, be ready for them to fall short of those aspirations. And that's because, at least in humanity, we have moral disengagement that occurs. And what that does is allows us to avoid condemning ourselves when we engage in immoral behavior. In other words, we do something in a situation because we feel that somebody really deserves it at this point, and that you can't be moral all the time. But this is for a really good reason. Otherwise, I would never do this. That's the kind of moral disengagement communication that you hear. And that's why those who are social learning theorists would say it doesn't really matter what people think about a situation, but more, what are they going to do when they come down to it? So if they see somebody getting beaten up and you ask somebody in a theoretical story way, what would you do? Oh, I think it would be imperative for us to try to break it up. And then when you get in the situation, do you actually go do it? And then in which case, social learning theorists would say, well, what's the point if you said you'd do it if you don't actually? I could care less what you think. If I'm getting beat up, I want you to intervene. Okay. So the social learning theorists really say there is no real morality. You're just trying to mirror and fit in based on how the environment has reinforced and punished you over the years for the types of behavior that you may or may not engage in. Evolutionary theorists are also not all that optimistic in regards to the human condition, because they look at how moral, emotional, thought, behavior, how all of that has helped humans adapt to their environments over the course of evolution. And so, in other words, a lot of our altruistic behavior is to protect our genetic outcome. So, in other words, a parent sacrificing their life for their child, yes, highly moral, but there is also something to be gained in that you pass on your genes. So they would even argue there's no such thing as altruism, that rather there's always somebody's always acting in their own interest in regards to it, and their own interest will help us in our evolution, and be able to continue on the species. Very interesting kind of perspective. All right, so those are the two new types of theories. So we've gone over Piaget's theory, we've gone over Kohlberg's cognitive theory and moral development. We've now looked at social learning theory, which is it's all about the behavior, and then a little bit here on evolutionary theory. So given all these theories rattling around, what does it look like throughout the lifespan? So that's what we're going to start focusing here, starting with Module 6 and regarding to infant morality. Stay tuned.